Welcome to Keen on Retirement, a show dedicated to helping you thrive before and during your retirement years. If you are looking to grow and protect your wealth and want to make the second half of your life the best half, then listen in as Wealth Advisor Bill Keen sorts through the key issues that you need to know in a lively and candid way.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Keen on Retirement. I'm your co-host, Steve, and Bill and Matt are with me. As always, guys, how you doing today?
Well, I'm doing pretty good, Steve. Matt, I don't know. You look like you're doing well. As usual, really. Always looking good.
That's right. Yeah.
On our program day, these filters on the
I don't have
software we
filters
use
on mine.
helps. Oh, the young guy doesn't need filters, Steve.
Yeah. What's your
What you
filter,
see is
Bill?
what you get.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I actually don't think I have a filter either, but anyway.
You don't need one. You two are just handsome as you are.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, you're very kind. Please. No, please.
No. Yeah, come on, please.
More, please.
Well, Bill, I want to touch on something here. So you said you're doing fine, but tell me a little bit about that. I think you had a little situation here not long ago. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. And, I hadn't brought it up in these prior episodes we've done over the last, 6 episodes, maybe.
Yeah.
And I stay very active. Have you ever heard the saying that if you're healthy, you have hundreds of problems? And if you lose your health, you have one problem.
Mhm.
Have you heard that saying?
Yeah.
And so we never want to take our health for granted. And I stay very active. I try to stay in good shape, and I'm in the gym a lot, moving around. And I was playing tennis back in January indoors with Carissa. She's gotten into tennis. I used to play USTA a long time ago, like 25 years ago. It was pretty good, actually. 3.5 player, maybe close to being a 4.0 player, if anyone knows what that means. It's a good, decent level of play. So I picked it up again with her. And we were indoor doing some clinics, and I turned to go for a lob. So anyone who plays tennis knows that, say, put one over your ear by the net, they put it over your head. You got to run back and try to get to it. And I came down wrong on my right leg, and something called my quadricep tendon completely severed from the kneecap. And I have not felt anything more painful probably ever that I can remember. Now, that's the most recent painful thing that I've had to feel physically, at least.
Yeah.
Had to be carried out, had to go directly to the emergency room, and then just in just a few short days had those tendons reattached to the kneecap. I mean, can you again, I don't want to be too graphic, here on our program. We do have a YouTube channel here. I don't know if I didn't really have any props.
I had pictures. Did you have video?
I should have brought my leg brace. Maybe I'll bring it next episode. I'll bring my brace and hold it up for the camera. But so here's something I've learned. Tendons connect muscle to bone. Ligaments connect bone to bone.
Okay.
All right. So, and we are a financial program, but sometimes we talk about personal things that are going on in our lives. And I have a client who's an orthopedic surgeon. I called him immediately. He was able to get me scheduled for an MRI within a day. He looked at it from his home. I mean, he was a very, very gracious gentleman. And we found out what it was, and I was able to get the surgery scheduled really quickly. And then they gave me the great news as I started studying, because the first thing you're going to do when you find out what ailment you have is you
look it up.
Look it up online, right? And then you see which is not recommended, by the way. Actually, the docs don't really recommend, kind of like we don't recommend people Googling around for all the financial information.
Getting their financial advice on the internet.
A lot of different things there, but I found out pretty quickly, and I was advised by the surgeon and my friend, who's also a surgeon, that this is a tough one. It's tougher usually than the ACL, quite a bit tougher to recover from than even a knee replacement. Wow. And an Achilles tear may be close to the same, but they said you probably won't be back to normal for 9 months to a year on this. So I was in a straight leg brace, had to keep it completely straight for about a month, had to sleep with the brace for the first 3 weeks, 4 weeks, maybe even 5 weeks, and really take good care. And it was my right leg, Steve, so I couldn't drive. So Matt, and I didn't want to burden our listeners and viewers with this, like I didn't want to try to get too much sympathy out of it while I was immobile,
Not too much. Just a
Yeah,
little.
not too much.
Just a little bit, not
At
too
least,
much.
hey, at least on our program. Now with my
Yes.
direct family and friends, I got lots of sympathy. And I'm still trying to ask why I'm not getting more now because I am driving again and things. But my kids drove me around. Oh, the kids came, brought the grandkids, drove me around. Carissa, Matt was Matt indicated it was funny on a couple episodes ago, maybe the last one, that we live in the same neighborhood. We were talking and he said something about being my chauffeur.
Yeah.
And I just left it alone at that point because, but I'll tell you what,
Now we know the rest of the story.
That's right.
At Keen, we have our clients' backs. I always say we have their best interests in mind, and we're always here for them. Same for the team. We have our team. We have each other's backs because there's times people go through things, right? And I was not shockingly, but just amazingly moved that the team actually had my back during this time, right? The Keen team was just amazing. So, but it's been tough. But about 3 weeks ago, I started driving again. It was my right leg, so I couldn't drive, like I said. And just have been doing PT 3 times a week. I'm able to bend the knee now. It was totally straight for a while. I can bend it now, I think 120 degrees.
Wow.
I lay face down on the, whatever the PT person's table. And she says, put your face in the pillow. You can yell as loud as you want in there while I take your leg and bend it to the point it needs to be at this stage, because all that tendon needs to get stretched and I don't want it to stop. I want to get full use of it again. So if you saw me today, you would not know that I have this injury because I was able to stop wearing this brace about 3 weeks ago. But if we got into a race up or downstairs, I would not be in contention wouldn't be winning any awards. But actually going up and down steps, Steve, is PT for me. So trying to re-engage that quadricep and let that all heal in there and go up steps like a normal person, not tiny ones, not like one at a time, but like a normal gait up, and then down is even harder. But anyway, it's coming and I'm doing good and all that kind of stuff. So thank you for asking.
Right. Yeah, well, I appreciate you sharing that and happy to hear that you are on the mend here and back to driving and not having Matt chauffeur you around to the office.
well, thank you. And again, there's a lot of people that are, working with way more difficult things from a health standpoint than I've had to. I mean, although this has been tough, but I know it's something that, has I can work with and fix. But you never take your health for granted. I mean, it's just reminded me that I never take really anything for granted. Relationships, all the blessings and the good fortune that we've all had, but especially health issues, you just don't take it for granted. And Carissa's told me, no more heavy weightlifting in the gym and no more of the heavy squatting. And you just look, and the doctor even told me, I said, hey, I'm in great shape, doc. He's like, Bill, you're almost 58 years old. It's wonderful you're in great shape, but your tendons are just getting older and less pliable. So maybe that next time, if you're ever out on the tennis court again, play doubles next time instead of singles. And when that ball comes that you could maybe get to, just smile and let it go by next time. So
that's maturity.
Yes.
Yeah. It's not very competitive, though. That's not very fun. You're going to tell your partner ahead of time you're not chasing any balls down?
I'm going to learn how to play the angles. You've seen the folks that are out there and they're really good at the angles. So instead of being Mr. Power, I'm just going to be angles from now on.
Play smarter, not harder.
That's right.
That's right. And it's all fine. It's all just fine. So thanks for asking. Thanks for letting me share it with you. Again, I didn't want to burden you guys with it, but I was able to do the podcast all this whole time. And a lot of you viewers that are watching on YouTube probably never knew the difference because I was all set up and you couldn't tell my leg was in a brace and sitting up with ice on it for at least 4 of those episodes during the episode. So, but I never missed one, did I?
No, you didn't. No. You didn't. You're neither rain, sleet, snow, nor dislocated, severed tendon is going to keep Bill away from the podcast.
That's right.
That's right.
All right. Well, great. Well, let's jump into the meat of today's conversation. What we're going to do here today is something we've done occasionally.
Yep.
And that is we're going to go through a case study. And a case study is a detailed example of situations that would be similar to the types of things that we work on here at Keen Wealth Advisors, the type of client situations that we run into. And so we put together some a situation here with a couple named Tom and Linda. Both of them are 55. And the situation that we have here is they're caught in the middle. So you've all probably heard of the idea of the sandwich generation. Well, this might be like a double-decker sandwich. Maybe we would call it that, where you've got Tom and Linda are here sort of in the middle. And then above them, they've got some parents that they need to be worried about. And then below them, they've got a child that they're still supporting and is trying to get launched effectively. And so that's really the gist of what we're going to be working through here today. I'll give you just a few of the parameters here. There's a lot more that we'll dig into as we get into it. But basically, as I mentioned, Tom and Linda, both 55. They are a suburban couple, live about 15 minutes from Linda's parents. They have a combined income of about $250,000. Annual spending to support their standard of living is about $140,000. They have $1.8 million of investable assets. Primary residence is worth about $650,000 market value. They have a small mortgage of $75,000 at a 3.25% interest rate, and they are targeting age 65 for each of them to retire. So about 10 more years before they hit retirement. And so, so those are just some of the basics. Bill or Matt, anything that you want to add there before I jump into some questions here for you?
Yeah, a little bit more about them. You mentioned they're both working, combined income. A majority of their assets are in retirement accounts. Actually, I think 100% of it's all pre-tax. So just something there that we made note of. And her parents are living. They're close by, but they are in their early 90s. And still in their own home. So there's some caregiving, that Linda's providing. She's local. She has a brother that's not local. So, so that's just some of the things we're going to talk about with them because, they come in to see us to really talk about retirement, and we explore more about the personal situation than I think a lot of people realize, because we're trying to identify all the financial planning kind of maybe gaps or issues that they could be facing so that they're prepared for them, or at least, we're able to have a conversation about, hey, this is an issue. Let's just, maybe there's nothing to do about it, but let's just be aware of it so we can have a conversation. Their son too is in the home. He's 25. He is working, does have a job, just hasn't kind of moved out of the house yet. So I think there's a little bit that we can discuss about that as well. So yeah, kind of exciting to go through this case study today.
Yeah, and Tom actually is an operations manager at a regional manufacturer, and Linda is in corporate finance. So they both have some acumen with respect to generally handling their affairs, but certainly with all the variables here, wanted to reach out. And this is, I might give them a lot of credit too for doing this with 10 years still now to go until retirement. Some people appear to us or get referred into us, or finally, you have that kind of motivation to go ahead and say, gosh, we put this off so long, we know we need help. And sometimes it's 2 or 3 months before retirement even, and we can help. I mean, that's fine. It's just when you have 10 years still to go, there's some levers to pull still, some real levers to pull to work toward those dates. Good stuff.
Yeah. And that's a key point to mention there, Bill, is the farther in advance that you start looking at this, the more opportunities that you have. And I think it's similar to working with a client who is selling a business.
Yes.
And that if you're going to be selling a business and you want to be working with a financial advisor, which is a good thing to do, do it several years ahead of time, because the farther ahead you have, the more opportunities there are to do things to make sure that when you actually do sell or have your exit, that you can minimize the amount of taxes that you pay. You can be really thoughtful about what you're going to do with that money. And so pre-planning is certainly critical there, and it totally applies to retirement planning as well. So thank you for mentioning that. So let me just start with then, Matt, what do you first notice about this couple when you take a look at these numbers here?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as I kind of pointed out, I mean, a majority, all of their liquid assets in pre-tax money, but they are good savers. They're both maxing it out. They're getting a match, very little debt too. So, as Bill mentioned too, good from a financial standpoint. And a lot of times you'd look at that and kind of think, well, looks like everything's in a good spot. Um, but again, as we'll kind of converse today, there's some things to point out. And what can we do between now and retirement? Now they're targeting 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
We find a lot of times that once someone knows that retirement's possible, that retirement date can move up, which is good. That's a positive thing, but that can happen. Or something happens that's outside of their control, whether it's a health issue with a family member or themselves, or even the corporation they work for makes a decision for them. And now they're faced with it sooner than they expected. So when you've done the planning ahead of time, or at least put a lot of this stuff together, we can now run scenarios and have conversations that are much more meaningful than trying to scramble and do it, last minute, especially maybe there's a severance involved and you have to make a decision. And it's like, you're
Right.
just so many things you're trying to deal with, which can be very stressful.
Well, Matt, when you do your webinars, I think you do one called
Yes.
Unplanned Unexpected Retirement Dates. I think you do a whole session on that,
Yeah.
don't you?
I
Done that
do.
in the
Yeah.
past? Because like you said, people have a date targeted and then either their own health, their spouse's health. And in this case, we're already looking at a situation where the parents are in the house and time's being spent already. So that could,
Yes.
I'm not saying it will, but it could
That could change
progress.
things. Yeah.
And I believe in this case too, that Linda has a brother. So we always, it's funny because folks really, I think, appreciate it once they understand why we're going so deep on like family tree and history of how folks got to the chairs they're in when they come in to finally meet with us. And we ask about siblings. We ask about brothers, sisters, nieces, nephews. We ask about things they might wonder. I wonder what that has to do with my, they're expecting, I think a lot of people, their experience working with financial firms is they come in and get pitched an annuity or something, or
Yeah.
a pie chart of mutual funds.
Investments. Yeah.
And they're not, a lot of the firms aren't even asking any of these questions. They're just talking about the dollars. It's pretty surface level, and we're really building someone's life. But in this case, if siblings are not local, if they're local, they can help. That instructs us and informs us whether or not there could be some help from siblings. In this case, her brother, I believe, was out of town and didn't visit.
That's
I think
right.
visited
Out
a
of
couple
state.
times a
Yep.
year. Yeah. So all of the physical help is falling on them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like in this case, I think it indicates that Linda's put it in about 10 to 15 hours a week caring for her parents. So that is meaningful. And
yeah.
so how does that impact the plan? What kind of impact does that have?
Yeah, because there's there's not a maybe monetary cost associated with that, but there's definitely a time cost that can then turn into a monetary expense, whether it's for the parents, like the parents are paying it, or even the children, like Linda and her brother. One of the things that we do know through our conversations with them is that the parents, in their own home and in their early 90s, and they do have some assets. Linda mentioned, yes, 250,000 or so. So it's enough that's supporting them with their pensions and Social Security, that they're not necessarily spending that down. But at the same time, if they were to need long-term care or go into a retirement community or assisted living type facility, they would be tapping that to cover that, because we know, especially where we're at, what those costs are, and it can be 7 to 10,000 a month in an assisted living, and as more nursing care tax onto that, that can get fairly expensive. So that's like one of the gaps we're kind of uncovering is, are you, Linda and your brother, are you all thinking about covering a shortfall if that were to happen, were they to spend down their assets. If they have some equity in their home, not a lot. I think it was a couple $100,000, not a significant amount, but that would still continue to fund that while they're still in there. But let's just say they run out of assets. Have you thought through what that looks like? Because it could happen, and if you haven't had a conversation with your brother about it, because he may have a different view than you do, and you all should address that definitely ahead of time, because there are things too that you can do about sheltering assets and things if that's important to you, to qualify for Medicaid, which is different than just going in and self-paying, but those are things that they can think about.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you touched on this. You said, what happens if someone has to retire early? So they have to retire early in a situation where they're the caregiver, or they can retire early because the financial situation is looking good. So that's certainly a positive thing. But like in this case, how do you think about that when a situation does arise, whether someone loses their job and in their early 60s, it's hard for them to find another job that replaces the income that they had?
Yeah.
Or in this case, if Linda has to really step away from work and has to be more of a full-time caregiver in the home with her mom or parents. So how does that affect how you guys think about the plan? What kind of analysis do you do in that case?
Yeah. That what we talk about, all these kind of different risks, and we want to point out certain ones, but also key in on the ones that they're concerned about as well. And with our planning tools, we're able to model in. Okay, here's just baseline. You keep doing what you're doing till, for them, age 65, saving what you're saving. Everything works exactly that that you thought, and here's what that looks like. Here's what retirement looks like in terms of dollars spent in retirement, what that is after taxes, what are different goals that you might have associated with that. Model all that in, and then we can look at, okay, let's just say something happens. So something happens to your parents, Linda. You're not able to continue working. Either you have to just reduce hours enough that you might have a little bit of income, or just completely work just ends up kind of stopping, and you're in an early retirement situation. So that's going to have a couple of different impacts. One, it's going to have less savings coming into the plan. So, because it's like, well, let's say you can live on your husband's, on Tom's, salary, all that works fine.
Yep.
So you don't necessarily need to tap your investments, but you're not saving your portion anymore. So that's a little less that'll be in the plan. A slight adjustment on Social Security, in the sense that Social Security projects that you continue working and earning kind of what you were, when it looks at what your potential Social Security benefit is at your full retirement age. So that would be slightly less, because you're not going to have those extra years that it's assuming that you're having. Not a huge impact, but definitely one there. So we can model that in. Now,
That's right.
If there are now outflows, that's also another issue too, because if you need to start pulling money out of the plan, well, one, how are we going to access that fund? At what age do we kind of throw those in there? Because if they're 55 now, you can access your retirement plans if you separate from service post age 55, but you're going to have, kind of some restrictions associated with that. And if you end up rolling it to an IRA, now you're kind of subject to a whole nother set of rules, to where it would be penalized. If you follow these rules called 72T, you can offset that. But,
right.
It's like, definitely talk to us or somebody if you're faced with that situation, because you want to make sure you structure things correctly. So what we would kind of suggest, if that's a very large, if that's a big concern for them, and it's, it's definitely a risk, it's like, we should probably look at maximizing some after-tax savings and not pouring everything into the 401k on a pre-tax basis.
And we know, based
you
on
do need to access funds, you should be able to access them.
Right. And we know based on what they're making and we said they're living on about 140K today, that there is some excess cash flow there.
Yes.
to be able to build that those after-tax portfolios. And if you look at, just take the rule of 72, some of you listeners and viewers know what that is. You take the interest rate divided into the number 72. I think and that's how long it takes your money to double.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a point where that breaks down though.
Yeah, it doesn't work indefinitely.
Because if you had 72%, it would not double in 1 year. It would be up 72%. Anyway, that's a whole other thought, but that formula does break down. But when you're in the lower amounts, Steve, you've heard the rule of 72, right? A lot of people have heard that rule. So you think about them having 1.8 million at 55, and they're going to be adding money, but even at a modest return, let's say 7% on these assets over 10 years, they would have close to 4 million, right? Double with what they've added, probably $4 million. And their retirement need, if you just kind of adjust it for inflation, that 140 today comes out to a little bit less than 200,000, but on $4 million with Social Security added in, I think if it all goes as planned, they're in pretty good shape, right? On this trajectory, which is your point.
That's right. Yeah. Their plan is very solid. It's just kind of like getting to that point. Not that we're trying to speed things up, because no, you want to enjoy your life, not just get to retirement and then finally get to enjoy it. But it's everything has to go correctly. And again, not that we think there's going to be some big issue with the parents, but that's just, it's a current risk today that they need to address. And, if she has that conversation with her brother and with the parents, because it's like, she wasn't aware of what kind of beneficiaries they have. She has an idea on assets, but how do they have everything set up? Powers of attorney, healthcare directives. I mean, those are all things that, especially when you have parents in the early 90s, you need to get in place.
We talked about that, I think, this very last episode, remember? Mean, it's a topic that comes up all the time. And remember, if they're out in the early 90s, that's not like a happenstance. That's just some genetics going on there. So for Tom and Linda to plan for a long life as well, I think is also something to have in the back of our minds, or in the fore of our minds, actually. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So if you two are sitting in front of Tom and Linda here today, what do you think would be the hardest part of the conversation you would want to have with them? Because it isn't all roses and daisies every time.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked a lot about the parents, and I don't get the sense from them that that's going to be a difficult conversation. When I don't know her parents, but at the same time, she does have a awareness of the balances and is helping them on a significant basis. I mean, 10 to 15 hours a week is a lot. So it sounds like she could have those conversations, and it might be more difficult with her brother. Just sounds like there's just less communication there on that, since she's the one doing a lot of it.
And we're assuming that they have a good relationship. We don't know that for sure, though. Honestly. So that would be somewhere we would want to go a little deeper, make sure there's not some adversarial relationship. Well.
And if they have different views on how to maybe help the parents or take care of the parents, because that can cause problems too. And you definitely want to honor your parents' wishes, or most people do. So it's like, well, what do the parents want too? So let's make sure you're all having that conversation together. But then on the other end of this, Steve, you talked about the sandwich generation. They have a son that's living at home still.
That's right.
And there's a cost to that. They may not have it necessarily in a budget or feel like there's an expense to it, but I'm sure they're paying for things that the son is using that they wouldn't be if he wasn't living at home. So,
Matt, do you have him pay rent? I don't know if you were going there or not, Steve, but would you have him pay rent? Would you have?
I mean, that is one tool. Here's maybe the downside. I think, like, my view is like, what you want to do is get him out of the house. So making him pay rent seems like, oh, well, this is now more of a contract and I can continue to live here and pay rent. And it's like, well, no, you don't really want that, I don't think. I mean, maybe they do, but it's
and you're not trying to sound
on his own.
I don't think you're trying to sound insensitive, or you're not insensitive.
No, yeah.
The goal is his independence, right? Like truly,
that's right.
Like truly him finding his way and finding his passion and enjoy.
You got to learn how to deal with these things.
That's right.
Like what? Go sign a contract with a landlord. Like you deal with it, versus the parents just dealing with it. And then you don't have any experience. And at some point you will be forced to have to deal with the stuff. I believe he's still on their health insurance, which won't continue indefinitely, because 26, you're kicked off. So there would actually be a little bit of savings there on that side. But okay, what's he going to do for health insurance? There's a lot around that with the son and helping him launch. I mean, he does have a job, and they said
That's right.
It's a marketing job. It's like, good. That sounds great. So it's like, let's just get him out of the house. Sounds like he can afford to live on his own. That's
right.
It's just hasn't had much motivation to do much different, but doesn't mean he won't. It just, let's have that conversation.
It's probably been about Steve, it's probably been about 7 years since we asked this question to one another on program. Your kids still on your cell phone plans? Matt, I know yours are.
Go there.
Steve, surely yours have rolled off by now.
Well, I just said don't go there. Okay, so
like
it is funny.
Okay,
it's funny that you should ask that because there's a handful of things that I don't enjoy.
Yeah,
one of which is buying a car. Another one is getting a new cell phone. So literally, just like a couple weeks ago, Linda and I went and we got new cell phones. And of course, that reminds me that I still have one of my 3 children is still on our cell phone plan. She's the one who's not married.
Okay.
And she's also the heaviest negotiator of my 3 kids.
Man.
And so she's always angling for why it is appropriate, for her to still be on the plan. So I will say she also recently got a new phone, and she was very, very quick to tell me that she paid for the phone. So that was not part of the monthly bill, but she paid for the phone.
$1,300 hits your bill 1 month or something,
No, that didn't happen. So so she covered the phone. So I think all 3 of our kids they're all doing great.
Yeah.
And that's a little thing that we do little things for each of them. So it's not like one gets a favor or something. So, but we have a little fun with that.
I think my older 3 are off, and it took a while though. It took years and years, but it wasn't that they were abusing it. They're all very self-sufficient. It was just simpler.
Yeah.
And they didn't care. I had access to their phone records. I can look up your phone, who you're calling. Yeah, they didn't worry about that.
You can see I don't call anybody.
It's fun to talk about though, a little bit.
It is.
One of the last things, right? And then we get to the point where we start, get to a point where we want to help them through our annual gifting or, some of the limits we've talked about there too, which is great, while they're still at a point in their lives where it can really help them. So not that they need it, but just it can help them more than when they're 65 or something, if we pass and then they get resources then. So,
well, speaking of gifting, I'm going to deviate from the plan here.
Okay.
Let's say that with the parents here, that they're going to need additional help. So we've got Linda that is doing some extra help here. So what happens if she has to be, say, a full-time caregiver? And what if there were like other children or other siblings that Linda had, and the mother who needs the care? Have you run into situations where she would say, well, I'm going to give Linda additional money from my inheritance as sort of a way to pay her for her taking care of me? Have you come across situations like that? If that happens to the siblings of Linda, do they tend to not be happy about that? Does it sort of depend if they all talk about that in advance? Is that something that you might even bring that up if it is turning out that one of the siblings is disproportionately handling some of the care here? How have you dealt with situations like that?
This is where I write down my answer on a piece of paper like a game show. I let Matt answer, and then I hold my response up to see how well we've worked together for 25 years. So it's like
the newlywed game, right?
Yeah.
I would say the short answer is we've had both, and we had all gamuts. But Matt, go ahead, please.
Yeah, that's exactly. It's like all of the above. Where we see the tension, I guess, around that is when there's just siblings don't get along, and then it feels either that someone's not pulling their weight relative to what the parents need, and maybe could be, and just feels like they're not. And a lot of times, our clients are the ones that are maybe the financially responsible ones that are kind of quarterbacking a lot of this. And they don't necessarily need the money. But, we do kind of talk to them about it. It's like, look, if you're spending an amount of time that's over and above what you think is expected of you. I mean,
Or you have to
you
quit your
definitely have
job.
a case for it. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah. And there's ways to come up with an hourly rate and how to do that, because this is a thing that does happen. I mean, even long-term care policies will pay for in-home care, and not that someone may not be a nurse, but okay, what's that cost for certain kind of the daily living type things? If you're helping them do those, if you had to pay someone to do it, what's that replacement cost? That's a good way to look at it. And you could definitely justify that. Again, if the parents are on board with paying it, I mean, that's kind of a parent's decision too. So that's the other aspect. Where it gets a little tricky is when maybe someone doesn't have the capacity to make their decisions anymore. One of the parents, has dementia, and now the sibling has, or the child has, the power of attorney. Yes, I mean, you can structure things legally to where you're not, taking advantage of them, but where do the other siblings think, well, wait a minute here, what are you writing checks to yourself for, and what's all this? So you
Hmm.
just have to have that. It's truly, it all boils down to communication and
Right.
conversation is,
Yeah.
yeah.
And how often do you, as the advisor, get in the middle of that, or maybe facilitate that conversation, or bring it up and say, "Hey, folks, I think we need to get together. Whether it's all of us or whether it's all of you without me." How does that work?
Yeah, well, we suggest it. I wouldn't say it happens that often in terms of just even the situation, but
Right.
we do suggest it and offer it. A lot of times we don't people don't take us up on it. I think they kind of feel like, well, we can handle it.
We can handle. Yeah.
Happy that you're glad that you offered, but they don't necessarily take us up on it in that case.
Hmm.
But it does, I
It's
can
happened.
think of a couple of times over the years. Yeah.
And we can be what's really interesting about that, whether it's siblings taking care of parents or
Yep.
in this case where the young man does have work. He is employed.
Yeah. You're
And
not just kicking them off in the street.
yeah, we've we've had conversations where it's had to be relatively candid, although we can be more objective about it and take some of the pressure
Mhm.
off a parent. We've talked about this probably 3 or 4
Mhm.
times in our 11 years on the program, where we actually can be. I don't necessarily want to say the bad guy,
Sure.
but maybe it's perceived that way. But we can be the objective experts, I guess, and letting that
Yeah.
child
Having that
understand that
difficult conversation.
they may be compromising their parents in a way that's respectful and with dignity. I think
Yeah.
that's important, and it at least opens the conversation. It's interesting. There's
Yes.
so many things around money and dollars and resources and family and people feeling guilty about things and
Mhm.
this kind of thing that I think a good fiduciary financial advisor that actually has personal relationships and respects the intimacy of those relationships over, gosh, decades and generations of families like we're talking today will take the time to do that.
Yeah.
Will have the bandwidth to do that.
And I can say in this situation with their son, the approach that I would take with it is, since he's working, does have a good job. It's
Yeah.
let's talk about budgeting and through that lens, and let's look at, you probably haven't put a budget together. I mean, because most young folks haven't. I mean, most people don't have to, because if what they have coming in is covering everything and they're not going backwards in debt, they generally don't worry about it. But in his case, hey, let's talk about a budget and talk about what rent can cost, and
Mhm.
how can you start saving for down payment on a home, and it's just the financial planning. Let's just go through that process, and we do that with our clients' children all the time.
You think about if you think about what's most important to folks, of course they want to know that they're okay. Like I say that in
Yep.
my book and we say it here. One, I just want to know I'm okay. Spouses want to know that if something were to happen to them, that the remaining spouse, whether it's the husband or wife, in a lot of cases, only one was really savvy on finance, but we always make sure that both are participating. But they want to make sure if something happened to them, that the remaining spouse isn't going to be taken advantage of by
Mhm.
somebody or scammed. And that's a lot of times we work with a lot of engineers and a lot of very smart people. We have people that have CPA backgrounds and legal
Yeah.
backgrounds and people that if they wanted to, we could probably give them the training, there's a lot of training that goes into this, especially to stay on top of what we do. We could give them the training, and they might even be able to be a financial planner if they wanted to really devote the time to it. Most people are retiring, so they don't have to have a second job. But one of the big reasons they come to us is they want to optimize their plan for the investments, of course, and then the taxation and other things, but they want to make sure their spouse won't be taken advantage of when they're gone. And frankly, I've had quite a few conversations in all the years I've been doing this where someone receives a diagnosis and they're terminal. And I'll tell you what, it's one of the most, it's difficult. Matt, I wrote about it in the book. Remember, we were at the kitchen table with some folks that we talked about one of the chapters, but where we can look that person that's terminal in the eye and say, our team will take care of your spouse, and that's a huge deal. I mean, this is far beyond dollar signs and decimal points. I mean, yes, you got to get those right, but it goes way deeper.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right.
I was thinking, we've talked a lot about, we talked about generally their situation. We talked about their actual financial assets, kind of I would say all progress starts with the truth. So the truth, not that people are trying to not tell the truth, but sometimes you don't know the truth, right? Because you haven't done the assessment and the inventory of your assets and your resources. So doing the assessment, which they've done the assets, they know what they have, they know what their debt is, they know what they're making, they know a plan. That's a huge starting point. We talked about the parents and the son that lives there, and those kind of a lot of different things we've looked at today in the short time we've been chatting. But let's say that all that worked out really well. And I think a good way to close our episode today, Matt, would be, let's say everything did work out and they were able to go out and retire, let's say 65, what they were shooting for, maybe 64, maybe 66, maybe, but around that time. Do you have one or two things that you would say would optimize their plan? Like, let's say between that age 65 and 70, when RMD starts, 73, I think for them.
Yeah.
Is there anything we could tie a bow on that if things go as planned and to tighten it up even? Now, maybe those are things you do later, or maybe there's some of that we start planning for today.
Well, it's definitely, we would plant the seeds of this, and a big thing that they're going to be facing for the rest of their life is just taxes. It's healthcare and taxes, are your biggest expenses. And we know taxes aren't going away. So they have a lot of pre-tax money. RMDs are when you're required to take money out at age 73, which will be converting to age 75 in the next several years.
Right? Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
And I always have this caveat. It's going to change again. We know that for certain because taxes aren't fixed. So it'll be something different at some point. And they're going to have large RMDs. So what we want to do is get ahead of that. Now, while
minimum distributions. Yeah,
that's right. So when they're both working, I mean, a piece of that could be, well, we'll do a tax analysis. And this is something we can change every single year too, is, hey, while you're working and saving, yes, let's build up some after-tax savings, but even let's look at moving a portion, maybe not all of it, but a portion of your amount that you're putting in the 401k from pre-tax into the Roth 401k. So we start building up that Roth bucket. And then in addition to this, once you retire and you have less earned income, we're going to evaluate Roth conversions every year. And we can do those beyond the age and when you're required to take distributions, but the sweet spot is from retirement up until that required minimum distribution age. So that'll be a significant tax strategy to just maximize the Roth conversion, contribution conversion, so they have the most kind of best tax picture for them, given where they're at today.
Which speaks also to why we would recommend trying to build up some after-tax investments as well, like a brokerage account, because those dollars could come in real handy when it comes time to keeping them in a lower tax bracket. If they retired at 65, let's say, so they could use some of that to live on and then convert some of that IRA money to Roth, like Matt just said. So that there's some things that, yes, are farther out. So what I think a message here, Stephen, a lesson is we're not just solving for this moment. I mean, we're solving for 5 years out, 10 years out, 20 years out, and already thinking about the proactive strategies and then working backwards and say, what are the things that we can do today to be prepared for what might come tomorrow? I think it's this actually is a really good case to kind of look at those different pieces of it and demonstrate.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I like about how you've described this situation is the dynamism of financial planning. And we like to say it's financial planning, not financial plan. So it's not, hey, let's put a plan together and we'll see you a year from now or 2 years from now. It's planning. So it's all about reviewing, updating the process. When something changes, well, let's look at the situation. Let's rerun the numbers. And so we can be dynamic in how we look at this. And so I think that's obviously one of the benefits of working with a financial professional is they're monitoring this. And when things change, we can update, we can adjust. And sometimes they're favorable changes and it's wonderful. And other times they're surprises that might be negative. And we have to do something a little bit different than the plan. But when you plan, you can prepare for those things and you can be resilient. So appreciate that. Yeah. So, all right. Well, good. Well, let's wrap it there then. And appreciate you guys as always. And for each of you listening, please subscribe to the podcast or the YouTube channel if you haven't done that already. And of course, tell all your friends and colleagues about it. We certainly want to help more people get access to the education that we're sharing here on the podcast and on the YouTube channel. If you have any questions, comments, or observations about what we're talking about here, or just anything as it relates to your financial picture, please make sure and reach out to us at keenwealthadvisors.com, and we'd be happy to connect with you. So, all right, it's a wrap, and thank you guys, and thank you all the listeners, and we'll catch you all on the next episode of Keen on Retirement.
All right, thanks everybody.
The Steve Sandusky Advisor Network and Belay Advisor are not affiliated with Keen Wealth Advisors. Opinions expressed by Steve are his own and not necessarily the opinions of Keen Wealth Advisors. Keen Wealth Advisors is an SEC-registered investment advisor. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where Keen Wealth Advisors and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. The contents of this podcast are intended for the residents of the United States of America. No advice may be rendered by Keen Wealth Advisors unless a client service agreement is in place. This program is intended for informational purposes only and should not be construed as advice on or a recommendation of any particular investment, strategy, or as tax or legal advice for your specific situation. Keen Wealth Advisors is not a tax or legal advisor. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult your licensed professional prior to investing. Information in this program was compiled from sources believed to be reliable. Due to the constant state of data changing, we do not guarantee the timeliness or the accuracy of the information provided. Our views or opinions at the time you are listening to the podcast may be different than they were when the podcast was recorded. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. Any indices referenced for comparison are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. Any prices that are referenced or market forecasts are as of the date stated and are not necessarily our opinions moving forward. As always, please remember, investing involves risk and possible loss of principal capital. This podcast is not allowed to be copied, distributed, published, or reproduced without permission from Keen Wealth Advisors.